So, how many of you have ever heard about the National Association of Home Builders? Good. The Kansas Building Industry Association? You heard of that? How about the Wichita Area Builders Association? Yeah, that's right. So those are the three legs of the federation that we refer to as the National Association of Home Builders. Local association, state association, and the National Association. Each one has a specific job to do in each of their areas. Wes Gallion, our EO at the Wichita Area Builders, very active in the development of policy and the shaping of policy and the shaping of this community. And at the state level, we're a lobbying organization there too, and we have lobbyists there that are working through that, and at the national level. Building homes, enriching communities, changing lives. That's the motto of the National Association of Home Builders, and that's what we do. Our goal is to provide market-based housing solutions, or the American dream of home ownership to those who want it, and to aid in the promotion and success of our members. So who are our members? Gary kind of talked about that. They're builders like myself, developers, remodelers, sales professionals, suppliers, trade partners, HVAC, electrical, mechanical, lawyers, designers, architects, title companies, bankers, all of which make it available that we can provide the American dream. You know, our members continue to build the most efficient, most sustainable homes that have ever been built in this country. Our members nationwide build almost 85% of all the new houses in this country. And for the first time ever, both presidential campaigns and a lot of down-ballot candidates have been talking about the housing crisis. Well, I'm telling you, we don't have a housing crisis. We have a housing policy crisis. I think you're recognizing that. If we can get the policies right, we can get the houses built. And we're going to be talking about how those things are happening now. Because housing, home ownership, is good public policy. It's good for America, and it's good for each of our communities. Home ownership strengthens families, strengthens neighborhoods, strengthens communities. New rooftops bring storefronts, more storefronts bring industry, industry brings prosperity. We need to promote home ownership in our communities and across the country. Good housing brings good development. Mark Dotzer, a doctor at the Texas A&M, regardless of how you feel about that university, he had an incredible study that says growth, residential growth, doesn't cost, it pays. Now you have to understand that we as home builders, developers, we create a product that we sell one time, but we create an income stream for communities, cities, counties, states that go on for the lifetime of that home. They collect franchise fees off of electricity and other utilities that are there. It is good for communities to grow, and it is good for them to take a look at promoting home ownership and home building in their community. The National Association of Home Builders has 140,000 members nationwide. 650 local and state associations just like the Wichita Area Builders and the Kansas Building Industry Association. The Wichita Area Builders Association ranks in the top 20 of all those associations with almost 900 members. And we enjoy that. We enjoy, as competitors, working together to get some of these solutions taken care of. So at the national level, we have an office building at 15th and M that's called the National Housing Center. We own that. We have 220 full-time employees there. Lobbyists, researchers, economics professionals. We have those that are top of the line in regulation and safety and environmental policy. Each one of them working to make an environment that's conducive for home builders to build. Let builders build. That's what we're trying to do. And I asked our economics team if they could put together some slides. Some slides will be actually Wichita or Kansas specific as we look through those. And if I can push the right buttons without getting this to, there we go. So our chief economist tells us that we have continued growth ahead, but slowing growth. So he doesn't see an opportunity for a recession. Now, you can note, so everything above the line is growth, everything below the line is decline. The 2 quarters that you see there were blips down there. I think there were some political movements in there. Why didn't we call that a recession during the Biden administration? And we did have a housing recession during that time, and it was really tough for a lot of builders. But because the unemployment numbers never got high enough, which was one of the things that the economists look at, that's why that area of 2 quarters of decline was not called a recession. So if we were to look at payroll employment, you can kind of take a look at where Kansas is in the blue line and where Wichita is in the red line. Then we're pretty much tracking with the U.S. government. So after the COVID recession, after the Great Recession, we have continued to make employment gains. So we are at 102% of the pre-COVID employment that we've had. So we are seeing locally some growth, and that kind of growth is good for my industry, it's good for the community, it's good all the way around. But we're starting to see unemployment, although it's remaining low, we're starting to see unemployment tick up a little, right? And there have been some announcements of some layoffs coming up. We're having that in Harvey County. I should have said that I'm a Harvey County resident. My business is here in Wichita, but I build in Harvey County residentially. I build in the Manhattan area residentially. Commercially, I build around the state. So just really there, but I wanted to let you know that, there were announcements that AGCO is going to lay off. We've heard that Boeing is going to layoffs. We think there's going to be pressure there, which is actually, but started, forcing the Fed to take a look at some of those areas. One of the great things about being in this position as the chairman of the National Association is you get opportunities to sit down, and our team, the senior officers of the National Association of Home Builders, sits down with the chairman of the Federal Reserve and his governors, usually about 4 or 5 of them at a time, and talk about what's going on in our industry as they look at what they're going to do. And I chaired that meeting in June, well, it was late May, but to talk to them about what's going on, what we see is going on in our area. So that openness, all off the record, but again, speaking to background and those kinds of opportunities. What a great opportunity to do that. I wanted to show you an alarming graph as we just talked about unemployment. This is the labor force participation rate of men, working age men. Look at how that has fallen from almost 88% in the late 40s to now 68% now. And it dropped down here right during COVID, and then it's picking up. Still haven't got back to the pre-COVID rate. Now, why is that? And everybody's wondering, did people after COVID say, I'm not going back to work? There are enough, I don't know, for lack of a better term, government handouts that keep somebody from wanting to get back in the labor market. And so remember this graph as we look at, this is the labor force participation rate by women. So steady climb, almost the same blip during COVID, still about where the labor force participation rate was prior to COVID. But again, if it wasn't for the female participation rate in employment, I don't know where we would be in productivity. So here's a glimpse. We're still seeing some wage inflation out there. Here's the hourly wages. Those wage inflation rates are slowing, which means that that's also part of the inflation numbers that I'm going to show you in a minute. But remember where this number is at 3.9%, which is the general average wage. So here is the consumer inflation rate. And so if we take a look at CPI, 2.5%, the Fed's goal is 2%, right? They want to get down there, and it was getting close to that, so they thought they could trim a little bit. But this 5.2%, that's the shelter inflation rate. The cost of housing, rental, and everything that goes into that. Heating, fuel, the cost of utilities, all of that is in that. And we continue to point to this, to the feds, that the housing or shelter inflation rate is much too high. And we've got to deal with that. So here, we spoke about monetary policy. This is how the Fed's really ramped up the rate really quick, got it up there high. They just decreased the Fed fund rate, the monetary policy rate by 50 basis points. Our chief economist is saying that we should see another 50 basis points, whether that comes as 150 or two 25 basis point decreases before the end of the year. We don't know, but we are looking for that to come down by the end of the year. I'm showing that to you because that has more to do with what builders pay for money than what buyers pay for money, right? So when this Fed fund rate and others directly affect how builders borrow money for acquisition, development, and construction costs. So AD&C lending. So once that AD&C lending comes down, then the builders have less risk and there's more opportunity for them to get that out there in the market. Now, even though that rate has come down, the 30-year mortgages have not come down. They've actually ticked up yesterday from 6.3 to 6.4%. We really think the magic number for it really to start stimulating purchasing is in the upper fives, 5.75, 5.7, something like that. So we're constantly watching what that's going to be. So as we look at that, that's the monetary policy. We think by the end of next year, they will decrease it another 100 basis points. So we're hoping by the end of 25 or at the beginning of 26, we're probably going to see long-term interest rates at 5.6, 5.7. We're hoping, because that's really a challenge. So again, talking about mortgage interest rates, and this is where we see where the 30-year fixed mortgage could be towards the end of next year. So I've given you just a general overview of what the labor looks like, what the market is. Well, let's talk about the supply side. I was actually at the State of the Union address when Biden said, President Biden, want to be respectful, President Biden said we need to create 2 million new homes, right? And so that's good. That was the first time ever in a State of the Union address that anyone has ever put a number or a need to build more homes. And we have to do that, the supply side. I was also had the opportunity to go to the Democratic National Conference convention and hear them say that they're going to provide incentives for people to buy. Not supply side, demand side. Until you get the supply side going, right? Right now, instead of having 2 people fight over one home and drive up the cost, now we're going to have 3. Wrong approach. We're trying to talk to everybody that listens. And at the convention, the Democratic candidate said we need to build 3 million new homes. And we'll talk about that. I was also at the Republican National Convention, had a great time. That was more like a state fair. It was festive, a great time. That's where I ran into Carl, and Carl said, hey, what'd you think about? And I said, sure, let's find a date. I'm happy to come here, and Gary Bond and some others who were there and having a great time. Supply side kinds of things. So let's talk about the things that really hurt supply side or getting more houses built out there at a level that is attainable. Somebody asked me earlier, what do you think about affordable housing? I said, I don't even use the term affordable housing. When you hear affordable housing, you're thinking government housing. You know, we want market-based housing. Instead of saying affordable housing, we need to start using the word attainable housing, where those members of your community have the wherewithal and the wages to attain a home. That means to buy it. Not some place to live, but some place to own. Because as I said earlier, ownership is the key to the strength of a community, right? So the 5 things that we always talk about on the supply side, we refer to as the 5 L's. The first one is labor. And we're going to talk about what the labor costs and the labor availability has been in our industry and how that's curtailing it. Lumber, and we use the term lumber. 2 years ago, we used it with lumber because lumber was at $1,400 per 1,000 random board feet. Now it's less than 500. You think, wow, it's down 2/3 almost. Houses should be cheap as ever. And we're going to talk, when we talk about lumber, we're talking about all the supplies that go into a house. As somebody had said earlier today, said, is it right that there are nearly 30,000 components that go into a house? And I said, depending on what you count, that's probably right, but there are at least 30 different trades or potential trade partners that are actively involved in the building of a house. So labor, lumber, land. The cost of land and the cost of land development into lots that can be built on, huge. Lending. The availability of dollars for builders to go out. I'm a spec home builder. That means I go out, I buy a lot, I build a house that I think somebody's going to buy and pray that they do. So lending is key, that A, D, and C lending that we were talking about earlier. And lastly, a big cost, legislative regulations. And so we're going to start to walk through some of those. So right now, construction job openings are right about, we've had gains in construction, but we still believe we are 400,000 construction professionals short right now. And with retirements over the next 2 or 3 years, we think that's going to grow to 1.2 million in the shortfall. So what are we doing about that? Well, first of all, we try to use this chart to encourage people to get in there. Remember I showed you where the wage gains were across all industries? The wage gains in construction are nearly 10% annualized. That is crazy. And why is that? One of the questions I got from the chairman of the Federal Reserve was, why have we not been seeing the productivity gains in construction that we see in technology and manufacturing? I said, Mr. Chairman, let's look at where we place the dollars in education in regard to those things. So we can't even get somebody on our job site until they're 18, while they're learning tech and advanced manufacturing at the high school level. We're getting them at basically ground zero, and people are retiring at a strong rate, but at a level that is as productive as could be. We can't do that. We must do something about that. So we're reaching out. We're reaching out to communities and schools. We really believe there's a sea change now. There are families and friends with 20-something-year-olds living in their home with $80,000 in debt and no employable skills. And so we're starting to talk in a couple of weeks. We're going to be having a Build My Future event at the Hartman Arena, or whatever the name of it is. Is it still Hartman Arena? Park City Arena, thank you. I knew it sold, I just couldn't remember the name, even though I drive by it every day that I'm in town. But Build My Future event is we try to introduce another Plan A. Too many times people in our industry or your industry has referred to construction as a fallback Plan B, when it should be considered as another Plan A. I'm telling you, I've got more trade partners that I do business with that are millionaires than I have bankers that are millionaires. The opportunities for young people. And I tell young people, you should learn a skill. Your skill can never be taken away from you. They can steal your tools, they can steal your truck, but your skills are yours forever. And if you can't be good at a skill, maybe you should think about going to college. That's the way we should approach this kind of thing, right? So anyway, here's what we're doing, and we're talking about Build My Future event. We have 1,400 kids signed up for that. That is amazing. We did one at the home show last spring, had 500. That was our first stab at it. Des Moines, Iowa has the same event at their state fairgrounds. One day, 7,500 young people walking through there. I remember I get invited up to things like that, and there was a young man who was standing in line to go through a backhoe simulation machine. And he was telling the guy, he said, I'm going to go to junior college, I'm going to learn how to run one of these machines, and then I'm going to come ask you for a job. And the guy said, young man, when you graduate high school, you come see me, I'll give you a job. I will pay you to learn how to run this backhoe. And if you're good with your money, 5 years from now, you can have your own hoe. And you can be in business for yourself. That's the promise. That's the opportunity that our industry can do, right? Women in construction, growing all the time. Look at the graph here. So we got well over 10% of those in our industry. Those jobs are manned. Can you say manned by women? Women by women. But that's really strong. But you know, deep coal mining has a higher percentage of participation at almost 13%. So those that go in the most dangerous, darkest, dirtiest jobs. So it's not that, it's just opening up the opportunities. And as we see that the female participation rate in our economy is growing, we should be promoting that, and we are. At the Wichita Area Builders, we have an active professional women in building program. We are trying to nurture and strengthen and equip young women to be a force in our industry. So I also talked to you about lumber, or all the things that go into a home. So if you take a look at this, you can see that lumber prices are 21% lower in the last 4 years than they were in the previous 4 years when they jumped up 60%. But take a look, ready-mix concrete's up 35% in the last 4 years. 56% is the raise that's gone in steel products. Power distribution transformers, which there have been a shortage of, they're up 72%. Gypsum products, all the drywall that go into your home, those products are up 56%. Bricks and structural clay tile are up 28%. And 35% is the average for other inputs that go into a home. That's where we're suffering. That's where it's really starting to hurt us. So let's talk about regulation. 23.8% of the cost of a new home across this country directly related to government regulation. Right? So, show of hands, let's start with this. How many in this room think a builder makes 20% net when he sells a house? Anybody think a builder makes 20%? I need you as my accountant. No, I don't. So we study that, right? Everybody thinks the builder is just, 7%. 6.5% was what I made on the last house I sold in Manhattan. And that's after a 5% commission to the sales professional, because I negotiated from 6 to 5. 6.5%. The average across the country, and our economics team does that. They measure that, and it's between 5 and 8.5% net on the sale of a home. And the government's taken 23.8%. And if you take a look at what all those are, it's zoning costs, $6,000. It's hard costs of compliance, almost $12,000. Land dedicated to the government, where they say, why don't you give us? And I was talking to somebody here who said they want some of your land so they can maintain something, or, so that's what you have to give up. You add all that up, and it's 93.8%. Not $93.8 thousand, or 23.8%. I had a meeting last week with the governor of Idaho. This number for a house in Idaho, which the average home price in Idaho is $800,000. They are the fastest growing state in the country per capita. They're percentage-wise, they're growing like crazy. As a matter of fact, I met with the governor there at a reception, and he said that they're getting so many of the Californians wanting to come up to Idaho to settle that he's going to build a fence and make Gavin Newsom pay for it. But anyway, he's a really great governor up there, very, very funny, but those are true. It's coming up there. And with it is coming up some of the no growth initiatives. But that is truly a staggering number. And most of that occurs at the local level, right? So what are we doing about that? The National Association of Home Builders, along with the American Planning Association and the National League of Cities, came together on a study, and they produced what they're calling the Housing Supply Accelerator Playbook, in which the APA and the National League of Cities recognize that maybe some of their planning and some of their policies have had some effect on the cost of housing. And so they're recognizing these minimum lot sizes, the size of sidewalks, the amount of setbacks, and those kinds of things have a direct effect on housing attainability. And these are a handbook. I should probably made this. I'm a recovering city official. It's part of a 12-step program. I was mayor of Newton twice. One, I recognized I had a problem, knew there was a higher power. It wasn't me. But anyway, I'm working through those steps. I still serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission up there and have for 16 of the last 18 years. But I got a chance to use that when somebody came in and said, look, I can build a triplex on this lot, meet all of the front yard, rear yard, side yard setbacks, and I can save my tenants $200 a month if you let me put a triplex on this duplex lot. But because your city rules say it's got to be so many square feet for the lot and have a one-car garage. And so the commission said, well, that makes a lot of sense. We should do that. And that's what this housing supply accelerator playbook is destined to do. And we're trying to get that out and about as well as we can. I think I did. Oh, I don't know what I did. Okay, so NEHB also came up with a 10-point plan to help tame what we call this shelter inflation. And here are a list of 10 of these. We use those when we talk to city and state and national. I had an opportunity to speak before the Lieutenant Governors Association in Detroit. And I told them the same thing. We don't have a housing crisis, we have a housing policy crisis. And lieutenant governors and governors have some say about it, because we're hearing from governors all the time, build, baby, build, right? But communities don't have pro-housing policies. You know, we have groups of people that say, not in my backyard. We actually have now bananas. Build absolutely nothing near anything, not ever, or not anywhere. I mean, it's crazy. And the same thing is happening in Idaho, because people are mad at the person that moved there after them that made the line at McDonald's or Starbucks that much longer, when we know that growth is there. Our customers, we're fighting the 5 L's. Our customers are fighting the 4 I's. Inventory, the lack of choices that are out there. Inflation, what drives up the cost of those houses. Interest rates, which makes it harder for them to qualify. And lastly, the insurance rates it takes to roll into a PITI payment that makes that happen, right? And we've just got to work. We have to continue to work on those things. So, the construction outlook, we're looking at residential remodeling. Because of the lock-in effect, we think residential remodeling is going to continue to grow. As people can't move out of their house, they're going to make their house nicer. They're going to make their house nice enough to sell faster when the market actually turns for them. Single-family starts, our economics team is seeing that they're kind of bouncing around, but are looking for some steady growth once we can get the interest rates right and get some of the AD&C lending where we need it to be. Here's an idea of where the benefits are in Kansas and where the building permits are. So back in 2004, prior to the Great Recession, Wichita garnered about 25% of the new home market. Now we garner almost a third, or just over. I mean, it's really strong in our market. Again, because of the lock-in effect, people not wanting to leave their homes because of their really good low interest rate, they're staying in them longer. So the amount of new homes that as a percentage of the number of homes sold is much greater than it's ever been. I want to give kudos to Danushka Nanayakara. She was the economist that did this. Her boss, Rob Dietz, a phenomenal economist, which is our chief economist in Washington, D.C. He went to a university called Ohio State, but he told me it's an accredited institution. But really great guy, but he's got a great team. Economists come and speak, and they're just phenomenal. So at this time, if we have time, I'd like to open it up for questions. Gary, how do we do this?
Thank you. Well, I like the attainable instead of affordable. I like that. That's good. And and when carpenters are retiring, and there are like 3 carpenters retiring, and we have 1 to replace those 3, is that the rate we're replacing carpenters?
It is dangerously close to that, Gary. And so we have got to work on that. So
I remember shop class. How many remember shop class? In junior high and high school, we had shop class. Now we don't have that at all. You got to go to VOTAC to do it. So I think we need to bring shop classes back. So,
however, 2 year, I'm telling you, Gen Z is starting to get it. We're seeing 4-year college enrollment down about 10%. We are seeing, God, I don't like to use the word trade schools, but we're seeing construction professional education up 17%. So I think people are recognizing I can go to work today, start earning a living, and not have to worry about paying off the debt. Sorry, Gary, go ahead.
We got about 10 minutes for some questions. We're going to start here.
Why in Wichita do we have more duplexes built for the size of the city than average in America?
It's directly related to housing supply. People who want to move. So we like to refer to the housing ladder as a housing ladder. Somebody doesn't, however you're going to progress up the ladder. Maybe like you did when you left home, you went in an apartment, you shared an apartment with somebody, then you found somebody and you got married, you decided that you wanted to have a home, but you weren't sure the area was going to be right for you, so you go to a duplex, which is more like a home and a little more responsibility, or a townhome. And that's there. We are not able to, and because of the cost of the interest rates and the inventory, people are choosing to rent. 1 million new apartments were being built last year, and now that's across the country, and that is going to change. So I'm hoping those duplexes won't be rental duplexes forever. Some of them will be split off and become twin homes where somebody owns half of it and somebody owns the other half. And so I'm thinking that's probably going to be the direction. Gary, did that help?
Well, thank you for being here today. About a year and a half ago, we had a person here that was talking about the demographics of Republicans and Democrats and independents. And someone here posed the question, how do we keep Kansas from turning blue? And the guy didn't even take a breath. He said, stop building apartments.
I have no comment about that because, I have no comment about that because there have to be, you'd have to study who's actually in the apartments, right? Because we know in our, right now, I was joking with somebody earlier. Right next to my son's house, a family from California just bought that house, and I met him in the driveway when I went to pick up my son for dinner, and he said, "Oh, my son said you just moved here from California." He said, "I did." I said, "Smell that? That's freedom." So we are appealing, but we have to again reinstitute or re-emphasize why we're so appealing, right? And so we got a sales job to do.
The nasty 5-letter word COVID, aka supply chain, let's go north to about 1 trillion loss. Did you guys lose about that much in your industry through that whole period?
So I'm sorry, what was the loss? I'm sorry, Gary.
Well, I said 1 trillion, but it had to be a big number. Your loss, your industry's loss through that whole period. Our
industry actually gained. The supply chain was was a fit during that time. And I had just joined the leadership ladder at the National Association of Home Builders, and I was given the West Coast, right, which was hit the worst. I mean, they couldn't, they couldn't mow their lawn, right, out there. And there was, in the supply chain issue, and I like telling this story, there was a big toilet shortage out there, right? So we had some of our members, that would install a toilet, get a certificate of occupancy on that house, and move that toilet to another house to get a CO, and hope that their toilet came in before closing. I mean, that was, and they were people who were renting microwaves to fill the microwave slot. It was nuts. We better never see that again, and I'm hoping that we won't have to. Sorry, Gary.
Good story. Here's a question for me.
Another excellent question. Are you aware of Biden-Harris administration's policy of pushing apartment developments and discouraging single-family developments? Part one. Part two is, how about bringing in Mike Rowe with 30 jobs in his foundation here to Kansas?
So, two things. Yes, we are aware. That had started, that the Biden-Harris administration had started that, but that was actually part of the Obama, when he wanted to actually look at the way small communities did zoning and to force out single-family dwellings to that. But we don't, again, the same apartment dwellers aren't the same for your community that somebody that owns, resides, and wants to flourish in there. Oh, and what was the other one was? Oh, Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe spoke at our national convention. He is incredible. It was great that when he did, I remember seeing the dirty jobs he did in the salt mine in Hutchinson. Mike is incredible. We give to his foundation. I know the Coke Industry supports Mike Rowe. He is definitely there. Those Mike Rowe, Charlie Kirk, all those guys are just doing an amazing job to get the message out that there's another Plan A out there. Sorry, my friend.
For years in the real estate industry, that's rules you go by that 1% of the house price would be your monthly mortgage payment. And $100,000, you pay $1,000. $200,000, your monthly payment would be $2,000. But what's driven the price up so much that that's not true anymore? The price is just astronomical on buying it. None in the east side, Wichita, 2 housing. And it's completely out of anybody's price range.
2.5 years ago, the average price of a new home nationwide was $340,000. The payment was $1,700. Today, the average price of a new home across the country is $430,000, up $90,000 in 2.5 years. You know what that payment is, given the current interest rates? Just over $3,000. What it takes to qualify for $1,700 versus $3,000 is the difference between like $75,000 in income and $130,000. It is not attainable or sustainable. Mr. Todd.
We hear a lot about the need for government incentives. Do you like government incentives, or do you prefer profit from the private sector driving the market?
Did you miss the part where I started with market-based housing solutions? Market-based housing solutions, but the builders, we're not asking for handouts. We're asking for hands-off, right? You open it up. We get the policy right, we can get the houses built, right? And I see it happen all the day when communities are trying to tell builders how to build, or developers how they should develop, or all the things that drive up the cost. So thank you.
Question back here from Dan.
First of all, Mike Rowe was here this week. He was at the Wichita Tech.
Awesome. Oh yeah, WSU.
What was going on out there, said Wichita's doing it right. So, hey, Mike is doing it. My question is, okay, I'm a builder. I build commercial, self-storage primarily. And the regulations are not actually geared towards building houses or properties that are about stopping you from building. I mean, I've gone against more things, and I've actually had meetings with them and say, well, we can't stop you, so we brought the fire chief in. Well, your job is not to stop me. That's orientation of the planning department. It's not the inspectors. The planning department is there to stop you from building. Have you seen the same experiences in yours?
It's happening all over. And when I like I said, when I was talking to the lieutenant governors, I told them, if you've got to build, if you and your governor have a build baby build mentality, then why do you reward communities who have a no building here attitude? Right? And we've seen it happen before, where local communities have had anti-growth or anti-residential growth, but are willing to subsidize industrial growth. And we've got to see that that's got to change. The federal government came at us and said, we're going to keep your transportation dollars away from you if you don't raise the drinking age. We're going to keep your transportation dollars away from you if you don't lower your speed limits, right? All of those things. So it can be done. That which we permit, we promote. And that's just got to stop.
Okay, question here in front.
With all the things that get happened in Florida and the Carolinas and so forth, is that going to send up costs on lumber and making houses now?
It's going to be really rough. It's going to be really rough. A month ago, I spoke in front of the county commission in Sarasota, which had gotten some FEMA money to help rebuild Sarasota from Ian the year before, right? And they just got hit again. But they said, we need to be ready for the next one. And so they want to invest in training up more workers so they don't have to, because when you bring in a worker from another state to rebuild, it costs more. And that drives up the cost, and that drives up the cost of insurance. So to the supply side, it will have a hiccup. But we are so far away from the actual rebuilding. We're still in search and recovery, and we have a disaster guy who's on the ground there telling us what we need. We have the Home Building Industry Disaster Relief Fund, in which we are making sure that our builders, our members are going to have what it takes to get there and get that going. But yeah, it will be a blip. And we've been working with our elected officials about what we can do about the lumber shortage and stuff and those kinds of things. Lumber tariffs just doubled in June. They went from 7.5% to 15%, right? And lumber's at a low time. Now that lumber price is not going to stay there. As demand picks up, when we're drawn into that and interest rates get where more people are looking and there's more demand, it's going to drive up the cost of lumber and some of those other items too. So it's going to be there. But we've been talking to our delegation from Kansas in D.C. to get them to understand that even the forestry department says that we have unhealthy national forests. Not national parks, national forests, right? That a healthy stand of trees is 100 trees per acre, and we have 300. It's not healthy for our national parks. We should get in there and thin them, and there's a gentleman that I serve on a board with outside of Conway that builds fire trucks, and he's telling me that when we quit logging those areas, then the fires became so much bigger in those national and area parks because we no longer have the infrastructure. That was no longer that forester's inventory that he would protect or ask the neighboring logger to come and help him put those fires out. So there weren't the logging roads and the bulldozers and the chainsaws, all of which we have to now fly in remotely. So Yeah, we've got a big row to hoe, and we're really happy to be fighting the good fight. I was asked by the Washington Post, is the American dream dead? I said, not on my watch. We're going to do all that we can to make housing attainable again. So.
All right. Well, Charles,